The glow from the setting sun had finally surrendered to twilight as I stood by my expansive office window. The city lights below twinkled like stars, mirroring the night sky. I turned away from the view, my mind buzzing with the plans for the Nexus. The room was silent except for the soft hum of my computer and the distant city sounds that ascended to my high-rise sanctuary. My phone vibrated, shattering the quiet. It was Cassandra. "Sullivan, are you ready for tonight?" Her voice was crisp, hinting at the gravity of our upcoming meeting. "I am." "Has there been any change in sentiment?" I asked, adjusting the stack of blueprints on my desk. "Not exactly," she replied. "The werewolves are still hesitant. The vampires are curious, but non-committal. And the witches, well, you know how they are about new endeavors." "I do indeed," I murmured, thinking of Morwen's stern gaze in our last encounter. "Where are we meeting?" "The old mill on Carson's Ridge, neutral ground for all." "Perfect. I'll be there in 20. The drive was quick, and the roads were nearly empty as I navigated the bends leading to the ridge. The old mill was a shadowy silhouette against the moonlit sky, its decrepit structure starkly contrasting with the bustling city I had left behind. I parked and stepped out, the crisp air sending a shiver down my spine. Cassandra was already there, her dark cloak blending with the shadows. As I approached, I noticed two figures standing near her, Elowen, the faerie liaison, and a towering figure I recognized as Rolf, the alpha of the local werewolf pack. "Sullivan," Rolf nodded, his voice deep and gruff. "Rolf, thank you for coming." I extended my hand, and he shook it, his grip firm. "We need assurances, Sullivan," Elowen spoke up, her voice melodic yet firm. "This Nexus of yours, it proposes much, but guarantees little." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their scrutiny. "The Nexus will be more than just a mixed-use space. It's a sanctuary, a place where the supernatural can coexist with humans, not just in the shadows, but as part of the community. We're planning areas sensitive to your needs-protected territories, customized environments. And what of the human authorities? Will they not hunt us down?" Rolf interjected, his brow furrowed. "That's where I come in," Cassandra cut in before I could respond. "I've been liaising with city officials. There's interest, cautious, yes, but interest. We can get them on our side with Sullivan's influence and the economic potential." The group mulled over her words. I watched their expressions shift from suspicion to contemplation. "Let's not forget the magical enhancements," I added. "The Nexus will be built on ley lines, which means increased energy for those who draw from the Earth's magic. It's a haven, not just a habitat." Elowen stepped forward, her gaze intense. "And you would bind this all in a pact? An agreement between all parties?" "Yes," I affirmed. "A pact that ensures mutual respect and protection." Rolf and Elowen exchanged looks. "We will consider this," Rolf finally said. "But Sullivan, be clear, this is no small undertaking. If the Nexus fails, it could mean war among the realms." "I understand," I replied, feeling the gravity of his words settle in my chest. "But think of what we stand to gain if it succeeds." As they departed, Cassandra lingered. "They'll need more convincing, but it's a good start." "It has to be," I said, watching the retreating figures. "This is bigger than any of us, Cassandra. It's about changing the future." "And you're sure you can lead this?" she asked, her tone softening. "I have to," I said with a resolve that surprised even me. For peace, unity, for a new dawn where we all can thrive. I believe in the Nexus, and I'll do whatever it takes to see it realized. The city lights blurred past as I drove back, the thoughts of the meeting mingling with the pulsing glow of the streets. The echoes of the conversations were like whispers in the shadows, each word laden with the potential to change everything. The reality of what I was attempting settled over me with a weight heavier than the night sky. By the time I reached my building, my resolve had hardened. The soft chime of the elevator seemed louder in the quiet as I ascended to my floor. Once a sanctuary, my office felt like a command center on the eve of battle. I sat at my desk, flipping open my laptop. The blueprints for the Nexus sprawled across the screen, lines and annotations mapping out a future that was either a beacon of hope or a beacon of doom. I couldn't allow myself to consider the latter. Failure meant more than a wasted investment. It threatened to ignite tensions that could unravel centuries of precarious peace. As I began to delve into an email from the city planner, my phone buzzed. It was Elowen. "Sullivan, can you meet? There's something you need to see." Her voice was urgent, a tremor of concern threading through her words. "Of course. Where?" "The Eastern Woods. Be careful. It's not just the Fae who roam there at night." I grabbed my coat and keys. Adrenaline brushed the earlier fatigue aside. The Eastern Woods were on the city's outskirts, where magic was said to be so strong it could warp reality. It was also a sanctuary for those who preferred the shadows. The drive was quick, my headlights cutting through the darkness. The woods loomed ahead, ancient and foreboding. I parked and stepped into the cool night air, the scent of earth and leaves strong. Elowen was waiting, her figure ethereal in the moonlight. She led me deeper into the woods, her steps silent on the leaf-strewn path. "What is it?" I asked, unable to hide my impatience. "Just ahead," she replied. We stopped at a clearing where the moonlight pooled like silver water. In the center, a tree, its bark shimmering with what looked like glyphs. "These appeared 3 nights ago," Elowen explained, gesturing towards the glowing symbols. "They're old ancient magic. It's a sign." "A sign of what?" My gaze was fixed on the enigmatic symbols, a chill running down my spine. "That the land is awakening. The ley lines are reacting to your plans for the Nexus, Sullivan. They sense the change. Is that good?" "It's powerful," she paused, searching for the right words. "Powerful, but dangerous. It requires balance. If the Nexus disrupts this balance, we'll make sure it doesn't," I stated firmly, already thinking of experts in ley line magic I could consult. Elowen nodded, her expression grave. "Be mindful, Sullivan. Forces are stirring. Not all will welcome the change." As we walked back, the woods seemed alive, aware of our presence. The drive home was quiet, my mind racing with the implications of what I'd seen. The Nexus wasn't just a construction project. It was becoming a focal point of ancient energies. Back in my office, I started making calls and setting up meetings with geomancers and line experts. Each conversation was a step towards understanding and ensuring that the Nexus would be a harmonizing force rather than a disruptive one. The night waned, and the first light of dawn crept across the sky as I finally leaned back in my chair. The city was waking, unaware of the magical currents flowing beneath its surface. But I was aware, and I was responsible. With a new day dawning, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Nexus was more than my vision now. It was a mission. and I was committed to seeing it through, to ensuring it would be a beacon of unity, not a cause for division. The echoes in the shadows had spoken, and I was ready to answer their call. The new day I dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the swirling shadows of the previous night. Once again, my office became a hub of activity as I arranged an urgent meeting with the key players of the Nexus project. The glowing glyphs from the eastern woods sent a clear message. This venture was as much about respecting ancient magics as it was about urban development. I glanced at my watch, noting the time. In just a few hours, I would sit down with representatives from the supernatural factions, city officials, and ley line experts. The conference room in my building was set up for the occasion, a neutral ground where every concern could be voiced and addressed. As I prepared, my phone rang. It was Cassandra, her tone brisk. "Sullivan, the vampires have agreed to attend the meeting. They're interested in the energy benefits, but are cautious about the exposure," she informed me. "That's progress," I replied, marking notes on my tablet. "And the werewolves?" Still skeptical, but Rolf confirmed they'll be there. He's bringing his betas to ensure their concerns are thoroughly represented. Good. Make sure everyone understands this is about collaboration. We're not just building a place, but a community. I'll make it clear. See you soon. I hung up and turned to the architectural drafts and mystical consultations stack. Each document was a testament to the complexity of blending modern construction with ancient energies. I picked up a report from a geomancer, and her findings were detailed with annotations on integrating the ley lines without disrupting their flow. Minutes later, the door to my office opened, and a young man entered, his eyes bright with an eagerness that matched the morning sun. "Mr. Sullivan, the conference room is ready, and the first guests have arrived." "Thank you, Marcus," I said, gathering my papers. "Let's get this started." Walking into the conference room, I was met with curious and cautious faces. In their impeccably tailored suits, vampires sat alongside rugged werewolves, their eyes sharp and assessing. Witches mingled quietly in the corner, their presence marked by a subtle air of enchantment. I took my place at the head of the table, the weight of leadership settling on my shoulders. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady. "Today is about forging a new path together. The Nexus is designed to be a sanctuary for all where magic and the mundane coexist and thrive." I outlined the plans, pointing to the projected blueprints and diagrams behind me. The residential zones for vampires will feature light-controlled environments to simulate night during the day. Werewolves will access private terraces that align with lunar cycles, and witches will have gardens where earth energies are strongest. A vampire elder raised his hand, his voice smooth like silk. "And what assurances do we have that the humans will respect our lifestyles?" Part of this project involves community integration and education. There will be cultural centers where human residents can learn about supernatural histories and customs, I explained. Transparency, respect, and protection are the pillars of the Nexus. Rolf, his expression thoughtful, nodded slowly. "And the ley lines? How do we ensure they are not harmed?" I gestured to the geomancer in the room, a middle-aged woman with a commanding presence. "Ms. Alden here has been working closely with me to design buildings that preserve and enhance the natural flow of energies." The meeting continued with detailed discussions, and each question was handled carefully and thoroughly explained. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, a consensus began to form, a cautious optimism that perhaps, just perhaps, the Nexus could symbolize a new era of unity and understanding. As the factions departed, Cassandra lingered behind. Well done, Sullivan. I think they're starting to believe in the vision. They need to, I replied, watching the last guests leave. This is only the beginning, Cassandra. We have a lot of work ahead of us. But we're on the right path, she said reassuringly. Yes, we are. The Nexus will be more than a place. It will testify to what we can achieve when we stand together, not apart. With renewed determination, I turned to the window, looking over the city that would soon be home to something extraordinary. The challenges were daunting, but the potential was limitless. I was ready to lead this charge, to build a future where every being could find sanctuary. The alliances of the night were just the beginning. After the meetings, the real work began. The concept of the Nexus, so eloquently drawn up in blueprints and proposals, now needed to be executed precisely to satisfy the human city planners and the keen senses of the supernatural communities involved. The balance was delicate, and the stakes were monumentally high. Early the following day, I found myself at the proposed site for the Nexus. The valley, surrounded by gentle hills and threaded with vibrant ley lines, buzzed with a subtle energy that was almost palpable. I walked the grounds with Ms. Alden and a few key architects, discussing integrating natural and supernatural elements into our designs. The ley lines converge here and here, Ms. Alden pointed out, unrolling a map over a makeshift table we had set up near the valley's center. Your main plaza should be situated to align with these convergences. It will enhance the natural flow and appeal greatly to the witches and fae folk. I nodded, making notes on my tablet. And the vampire residences? One of the architects said, We've designed them with underground levels, using the natural landscape to provide necessary darkness during daylight hours. The entrance will be discreet, aligning with their privacy and security needs. As we spoke, a small team of environmental consultants conducted soil tests to ensure that our constructions would not harm the area's natural sanctity. Every step we took was carefully monitored and recorded, a necessary precaution to maintain the trust we were building with all parties involved. Later that day, as the sun descended below the horizon, casting long shadows over the valley, Rolf and a few of his pack joined us. Their keen eyes scanned every marker and flag we had placed. I need to see that the boundaries respect our territories, Rolf stated, his tone firm but fair. Our pack needs room to roam, especially during the full moon. We've allocated over 20 acres on the northern end exclusively for that purpose, I reassured him, showing him the map. It's isolated from human areas and has easy access to the woods beyond. Rolf surveyed the area, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he nodded slowly. This is good. I will bring my elders here to see it for themselves. Thank you, Rolf. You must be part of this every step of the way. As they departed, the evening brought another visitor, Morwen, the elder witch whose endorsement we desperately needed. She arrived just as the sky turned a brilliant shade of twilight, her presence commanding even in the quiet of the evening. Sullivan, show me where our gardens will be, she requested, her voice echoing slightly in the open space. I led her to a secluded valley where the earth felt energetic. Here. The gardens will be here, with spaces designed for solitude and larger areas for communal rituals. Morwen closed her eyes, her hands reaching out to touch the soil. After a few moments, she opened her eyes, her gaze meeting mine. There is much power here. I feel the ancestors smile upon this ground. Her words lifted a weight off my shoulders I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Your approval means everything, Morwen. She nodded, her look stern, yet softening around the edges. I will speak of this place to my coven. The Nexus could be a beacon of peace, as you say. But remember, Sullivan, the land remembers. Respect it, and it will respect you in return. I reflected on her words as I drove back to the city that night. The Nexus grew from a mere concept into a living, breathing entity that commanded respect and careful handling. It was no longer just an architectural project. It was becoming a part of the very fabric of the supernatural and human realms. The challenges were still monumental, the path fraught with potential pitfalls. Yet, with each successful negotiation and approval from the community leaders, the Nexus felt more inevitable and more suitable. The groundwork laid today, both literal and metaphorical, was the foundation for a future where maybe, just maybe, peace wasn't such an elusive dream after all. Looking over the glowing city in my high-rise office, I felt a profound connection to the forces at play, both seen and unseen. Tomorrow, I would meet with city officials armed with endorsements from supernatural leaders. The stakes were high, but so were the spirits. The Nexus was on its way to becoming a reality, and I was at the helm of this unprecedented venture. The grounds of accord had been set, and I was ready to lead this charge into the dawn of a new era. The early morning light streamed through the tall glass windows of my office, casting long shadows on the architectural models of the Nexus displayed prominently on the central table. Today was crucial. The city officials were coming to scrutinize the details of the project, and their approval was the final hurdle in legitimizing the Nexus within the human realm. Before the meeting, I reviewed every document, plan, and projection, ensuring that the integration of supernatural and human aspects of the Nexus was presented as a novelty and a necessary evolution of urban living. My phone buzzed with Cassandra's brief message. "City Hall is on their way. Are you all set?" I replied confidently, my mind focused. As I arranged the last of the documents, there was a soft knock at the door. Marcus ushered in the officials, a group of 5 representing different facets of the city's bureaucratic spectrum. Their expressions ranged from curious to cautiously optimistic. "Good morning," I greeted them warmly, extending my hand. "Thank you for coming. What you'll see today will mark a significant milestone in our city's future." The presentation went smoothly. I talked them through the environmental considerations, the economic benefits, and the cultural impact of the Nexus. The models of the residential zones, the communal gardens, and the commercial spaces designed to cater to both human and supernatural citizens illustrated the vision clearly. However, as the meeting progressed, I could sense a shift in the room's atmosphere. The head of zoning, a meticulous man with sharp eyes, leaned forward, his voice carrying a hint of skepticism. "Mr. Sullivan, while the concept is undoubtedly innovative, have you considered the security implications? Integrating supernatural beings with humans on this scale is unprecedented." I was prepared for this. "We have detailed security protocols already drafted," I explained, displaying slides of advanced security measures, magical and technological. "Furthermore, we are working closely with supernatural leaders to ensure their laws and norms are respected and enforced." As the discussion deepened, the door opened abruptly. It was Cassandra, and by the look on her face I knew immediately that something was wrong. She approached swiftly, whispering urgently in my ear. "There's trouble at the Eastern Woods. A faction of rogue supernaturals, they're protesting the construction. They've gathered a crowd." My heart sank. Despite our efforts, I had feared such resistance. The integration of so many diverse entities was bound to create friction. "Excuse me," I addressed the room. "A minor issue has arisen that I need to attend to. Please enjoy some refreshments. I'll be back momentarily." Outside, Cassandra and I babbled. "How bad is it?" I asked. "They're rallying the local supernaturals who fear the change. It could get ugly if we don't handle this delicately." I nodded, making a decision. "I'll go there myself. We must show that we're committed to listening to all voices." Driving to the eastern woods, the day's weight pressed down on me. Upon arrival, the sight of the crowd was daunting. Werewolves, witches, and more, their faces etched with concern and anger. I stepped out, my expression calm, my voice clear and strong as I addressed them. "I understand your fears. The Nexus is a new frontier for all of us. But I assure you, this is not just a place for humans or any group. This is a place for all of us, built on respect, peace, and unity." A werewolf stepped forward, his voice gruff. "And if we don't want your unity?" "It's your right," I replied. "But let's talk. Let me hear your concerns. The Nexus will evolve with your feedback. This is not set in stone. It's a living project, growing and adapting with us." The tension eased slightly as the dialogue began. I stayed for hours, listening, explaining, and modifying plans where necessary. As the sun set, the initial anger had softened into cautious dialogue, the first step towards understanding. Driving back to the city, the challenges loomed more extensively than ever, but so did the resolve. The whispers of rebellion had spoken, and I had listened. Now, it was time to move forward, with not just the vision of the Nexus, but its spirit of inclusivity guiding every decision. By the time I returned to the office, the city officials had left, leaving behind a string of cautious endorsements and a few skeptics still holding their reserves. The reality of integrating such a diverse population into the Nexus was proving to be as much a diplomatic endeavor as a construction project. However, the encounter in the eastern woods strengthened my resolve. The project needed to be adaptive, evolving with the needs and fears of all its potential inhabitants. Over the next few weeks, progress on the Nexus moved forward with renewed vigor. The plans were adjusted, incorporating feedback from the various supernatural factions. The residential zones were redesigned to allow more privacy for the vampire community and more prominent, secure expanses for the werewolves. I ensured the ley lines were protected and prominently featured in the landscape design for the witches and other magic-sensitive beings, creating harmonious spaces that amplified their natural power. Despite these advancements, a darker undercurrent was emerging. Rumors reached me of a coalition of supernaturals, not just resistant to the Nexus, but actively plotting its downfall. This group, calling themselves the Eclipse, believed that any integration with humans would lead to exploitation and, ultimately, the dilution of their ancient heritages. Cassandra brought me the news one late evening, her face etched with concern. "They're organizing, Sullivan, and they're not just fringe groups anymore. Some influential leaders from darker realms are backing them." "This is what I feared," I admitted, staring out at the city's skyline, which seemed to pulse with a life of its own. "But we cannot let fear dictate our path. We must engage with them and understand their grievances." "And if they won't listen?" Cassandra asked, her voice tense. "Then we prepare for all possibilities. But first we try diplomacy." The meeting was set up as a neutral gathering, hosted at an underground venue known for its historical neutrality in supernatural disputes. I arrived with a small, trusted team, aware that the night could turn in any direction. The leaders of Eclipse were already there, their expressions closed and hostile. The air was thick with tension, charged with unspoken threats. "I appreciate your coming," I began, my voice calm and steady. "I know you have concerns about the Nexus. I assure you that this project is for all our benefits, supernatural and human." A tall vampire, his eyes cold and calculating, spoke first. "Your assurances mean nothing when it's our existence at stake. You ask us to expose ourselves to a world that hunts us, fears us. I ask you to consider a world where that isn't the case," I countered. "Where we are understood, not feared. The Nexus is about creating that understanding, that peace." "A naive dream," a witch from the back muttered loudly, her voice carrying a bitter edge. The negotiations were grueling, stretching into the early hours of the morning. For every step forward, it felt like we took two back. But as dawn approached, a breakthrough came. A young werewolf, who had been silent the entire night, stood up. "My pack wants peace, wants a place in your Nexus," he declared, his voice breaking through the stalemate. "We're tired of hiding, of running." His words seemed to resonate, stirring a murmur of agreement among some of the younger attendees. It was a slight shift, but a shift nonetheless. The meeting ended not with a resolution, but with a tentative agreement to continue talks. It was a minor victory, but a victory in the direction of peace. As the city woke up, I left the meeting exhausted but hopeful. The road to the Nexus was fraught with more dangers than I had anticipated, but also filled with more potential. The siege was not just against physical threats, but against age-old fears and prejudices. If the Nexus could overcome these, it would indeed be a beacon of a new era. Returning to my office as the first rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of gold and amber, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges of Eclipse had hardened the project's resolve, and in every whisper of rebellion, I now heard a chance for dialogue, a possibility for unity. The siege of Eclipse was both a battle and a promise of dawn, and I was ready to see it through to the light. In the following weeks, the Nexus became more than a blueprint. It transformed into a tangible symbol of potential harmony or discord, depending on whom you asked. The scaffolding of the buildings mimicked the intertwining of the myriad lives that would soon inhabit them, a complex mesh of iron and intent. Progress was palpable. Each beam placed a statement of commitment to the vision I had laid out. However, the challenges of Eclipse lingered, casting long shadows over our achievements. The talks had opened a pathway, but it was a narrow and precarious one, fraught with the skepticism and distrust of centuries. It was essential to keep the lines of communication open and transparent to transform skepticism into partnership. I found myself in continuous meetings, not just with constructors and architects, but with representatives of every faction, ensuring that each voice was heard and integrated into the living fabric of the Nexus. Cassandra was instrumental during this phase, and her diplomacy skills were as vital as any building material we used. One exceptionally crisp morning, I met with the young werewolf who had spoken out during the Eclipse meeting. His name was Lachlan, and his support had been a turning point. We walked through the partially constructed site of the Nexus, his eyes scanning the sprawling landscape that would soon be part of his pack's new territory. "It's different, seeing it in person," Lachlan remarked, his tone mixed with awe and apprehension. "To think we might walk openly among humans. It's unsettling, but exciting." "That's the spirit of the Nexus," I responded, gesturing towards the areas designed for privacy and security, tailored to their needs. a place not just of coexistence but of mutual respect and understanding. Lachlan nodded, but his following words carried the weight of ongoing concerns. There are still those in my pack who fear this change. They remember too many betrayals. And they have every right to, I acknowledged. This, the Nexus, it's a trial of unity for all of us. We must prove, not just with words but actions, that we are committed to a different path. As we continued our tour, the discussions delved deeper into the security measures, the cultural exchange programs, and the dedicated spaces that would allow supernatural beings to practice their traditions without interference. The rest of the day was spent in similar meetings with other group leaders, each conversation a stitch in the fabric of the community we were building. The witches wanted assurance that technological intrusions would not disturb their sacred gardens, while the vampires sought confirmation that their nocturnal activities would be protected from prying eyes. Each concern was addressed with a promise backed by concrete plans and policies. The Nexus was evolving, shaped by its future residents' myriad needs and dreams. As the day turned to evening, I stood on the top floor of what would soon be a vibrant cultural center, looking out over the construction site. Lights flickered on as workers continued their shifts, a testament to the relentless push towards completion. I felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, a feeling mirrored in the faces of everyone involved with the project. Later, back in my office, I updated the city officials with a comprehensive report. The document detailed every agreement, every modification, and every assurance given to the supernatural communities. The human authorities needed to understand the depth of commitment the Nexus represented. Just as I was about to call it a day, my phone rang. It was Morwen, her voice carrying an unusual warmth. "Sullivan, I've seen the progress. You've kept your word," she said, a note of respect threading through her words. "The Coven is prepared to endorse the Nexus formally. We believe in what you're trying to achieve." Her endorsement was more than symbolic. It was a beacon of trust that could illuminate the path forward for all hesitant parties. I thanked her, feeling a surge of gratitude and determination. Unity's trial was ongoing, and each day there was a test of resolve and faith in the Nexus's vision. But with each endorsement, beam raised and promise kept, we were building more than a structure. We were crafting a new paradigm of community, where fear replaced curiosity and ancient enmities could give way to newfound alliances. As the skyline darkened and the city lights began to mirror the stars, I realized that the Nexus was no longer just my vision. It had become a shared dream, pulsating with the collective heartbeat of its future inhabitants. The Unity trial was far from over, but for the first time, it felt like a trial we could all withstand together. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more episodes, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe.